Welcome to Gothcast. I'm Dr. Sanders, and today I bring you episode 2 of Goth Thrifting. So I went thrifting. I mean, I go thrifting all the time, but now I'm actually videotaping it, I guess. But this is me going around Washington and finding a whole bunch of interesting things. And you may notice a theme in today's video, but I think you guys will figure that out as we go. So enjoy!
Alright, we're going to start off with the Goodwill on this particular trip. As you can see, it's starting to be a nice overcast day in Washington. Perfect. I hate the sun, and it was pretty sunny around this time. Here are the VHS and DVDs and, just the media section. And this particular place has a lot of different stuff. It's like most Goodwills, either really hit and miss. We had a copy of The Crow on VHS, which I think is obviously a really good movie. I did a huge review on this a while ago. I actually really want to do a sequel, but it's a lot more complicated. I think it's funny that they compare to the original Batman, and you see that review that says, "A Triumph." That's Playboy magazine. Such a weird publication to print a review from on this movie. There was also a copy of Scream 3 here. Not the best Scream, but I know people enjoy that release. Also, I thought I would throw in some of these more kid-friendly spooky films. That's like the Winnie the Pooh Halloween special, and It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, which I used to watch all the time. It definitely is a classic in my eyes. I thought this was really weird. This is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but look at that witch. Totally looks like Maleficent. That's totally like a knockoff art. And of course, we had The Mummy on VHS. I know somebody who's a huge fan of The Mummy. It's their favorite film. And there's some weird sticker attached to it. But then you could also get the sequel, The Mummy Returns, if you want some mummy action back-to-back. Beautiful Brendan Fraser. So soft. And then you can watch The Scorpion Queen with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who, of course, is one of the greatest actors in history. I like how the review says The Rock rules, because that's so true. And, of course, we have Blade on VHS. I have all the series on DVD. But I always thought this was a cool VHS back in the day because it had the embossed side. So it's like you can see the silver part of it, and it looks really cool. Yeah, you can see me running my thumb over it. But it's that was a really standout VHS back in the day. This was a VHS for The Terror. And one of the reasons I want to put this in here is because this is from the 1963 film, and it's public domain. And even back then, you could just get a VHS and release your own. Like I could make a cover with just my face and say The Terror and sell it. So there's a million different covers for The Terror because it was public domain and anyone could make a copy. This really threw me off. This was a t-shirt. It was like a box that looked like a VHS that had a t-shirt of RoboCop. So because I looked at that and I was like, I know RoboCop's now 2 VHSs. Yeah, sure enough, it was a t-shirt. It's a new product that looks like a VHS. So I guess there's a whole bunch of these. And this is awesome. This is a DVD for Mirror Mask. I didn't actually have this, which is totally awesome that I actually found it. A lot of people call this a spiritual sequel to Labyrinth. A lot of the same kind of creative crew behind it. But it also has the mastermind Neil Gaiman behind it. So really interesting film. Some of the CG maybe doesn't hold up as well today as it did back then. But very interesting and very unique movie. The Grudge 2. I don't think this movie's that great. I think it's better than the first one. I actually think Ju-On 2, like the sequel to the original one in the original language, I actually think that's one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. So actually, if you want to look up Ju-On 2, I think that's frightening. Grudge 2, not so much. And these are DVDs for Paranormal Activity, The Ghost Dimension, which is actually the 6th movie in the series. And then, of course, The Witches of Eastwick with Jack Nicholson, Cher, Susan. I mean, it's just everyone who you love is inside of The Witches of Eastwick. And this wasn't the greatest version of this DVD, so I didn't pick it up. But I just thought I'd show it here because it's amazing. This was really weird, and I'll talk more about this later in the video. This is a VCD for Alice in Wonderland, and the outside of it shows Cinderella. I don't know if it initially had Cinderella. This whole thing is really weird, so just stay tuned and you'll learn more about that, but I did pick that up. Of course, we got a whole bunch of Twilight stuff, and here is a cassette for The Church's Gold Afternoon Fix. This was released in 1990. Not the best album by the band, that's for sure. Definitely not as good as Starfish, which is the most popular. Just has a kind of sound. And then you have New Order's Republic, released inside of 1993. Again, some people have some strong opinions about the band at this point. Look at that big old crack in the side of the case. That's what a bummer. And then, of course, we got Creed because we had Nickelback in the last episode. This is the best album ever. Goth just revolutionized the genre. You know, what else can you say about Creed? This is really cool. This is an MTV 120 minutes, never mind the mainstream compilation CD. If you don't know, that was a show back in the 90s. It was really great. There was a whole bunch of amazing bands on there. And it had a whole bunch of cool bands, the Stone Roses, the Mission UK, the Church, Cocteau Twins. I mean, this was awesome. Even Sonic Youth and really great stuff on there. Oh, what a great Smiths compilation. I can't wait to listen to this in my car. Oh, and it's gone. Yep. I think Robert Smith came in and, going through the CDs and smashing all the Smiths and Morrissey CDs. So I understand. Oh, hey, look, The Cure, at least. I can just buy this. Oh, it's going to be so amazing. Oh, and guess what? There's no CD in here either. So I guess Morrissey came in behind Robert Smith and just smashed all the CDs. Then we have some books here. A really weird one. We have the novelization of Pitch Black, the first Riddick film, which, by the way, is really great. I actually like quite a few of the Riddick movies. They have a really cool atmosphere. But yeah, there's a Pitch Black book. This is a thing called Zombie, like Xylophone, Dead on Arrival. This is a weird comic. It was like one of those things that's like a book / comic where it has kind of comic illustrations, but is really just more of like a storybook. It's a weird sort of blend. This was a really weird dragon thing. It was really heavy, actually. The reason I'm picking it up from the nose is because it's the only really way to pick it up because of the head. The main part of it is really massive, but I don't know, just ornamental thing to hang on your wall. You guys remember these things? Like the cool projectors that your teacher would always have and you wish you could write on? They would put the transparency on there and then write math problems or English stuff, and it was cool. They would spray the little water on there, and I don't think they use these in classrooms anymore. It's been a long time since I've obviously been in a classroom, but I remember these, so it's probably just like overstock from a library or something. Here's a whole bunch of Stephen King books. Again, we have a copy of The Dead Zone with a different cover than the one I showed in the last episode. So yeah, there's a ton of them. The Running Man. Most people forget that The Running Man is Stephen King, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. Obviously, the movie and the book have some differences, but he actually wrote it under Richard Bachman. Stephen King wanted to see if he could be a success outside of his name. Then shortly after, went back to using Stephen King. And that's his whole thing. And then, of course, there's It and Dark Tower and a whole bunch of different stuff. So here's Queen of the Damned. It's funny because it has the cover for the movie on it. It certainly was a movie. I know a lot of people have some love for it, but it's got some issues. Especially since it tries to combine so much together into one film. But this place actually has a couple of Anne Rice books. You can even see the two different covers. Well, this is only just two of them, but there's a whole bunch of different covers for The Witching Hour. But it's funny, they have two copies. It's the same book, but they have different covers. This was a really weird manga thing. It's called I Love Halloween. And I guess it was American or Canadian or something, but it's done in the style of manga. So that's cool. Here's Real Vampires Don't Diet. I just thought this was really funny. Author of Real Vampires Get Lucky. So I guess look that up if it seems interesting to you. And Edward Scissorhands t-shirt says, I am not complete. It was really weird. I don't know. It's just, I didn't necessarily like the design of this. I was even surprised that I noticed that it was Edward Scissorhands. I just like, oh, that's like what he says in the movie. I was like, oh, okay, this actually is an official shirt. So then I made my way to Value Village, and it was actually really nice and rainy today. I was very happy about that. I really liked the rain a lot. They had some Halloween decorations here. Like these little ghosts and different stuff. But they had these really weird, tall things. I don't know. They were really skinny. They just didn't seem quite right. I don't know how to describe it. They look really weird to me in real life. I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable. This is Cocteau Twins for Calendar Cafe. It's really weird because I never usually come across Cocteau Twin stuff. But ever since I started filming myself, apparently I'm coming across more of it. So that's cool. I always remember that this album was advertised in the interview they did with Propaganda Magazine. So that's really cool. That's what I always think of when I think of this. As soon as I hear, For Calendar Cafe, I remember that article in Propaganda Magazine. Here is a very conflicting film. That is Dark Shadows with Johnny Depp. That's a whole video on its own. I will cover it someday, believe me. And then up here, you can also see that there's a set of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, actually two sets. And Dead Like Me, I don't think a lot of people think about that show, but it's basically about a girl who becomes the Grim Reaper, so it's pretty interesting. And of course, Twilight Eclipse. Why is there so much Twilight stuff? Why? Just why is there so much Twilight stuff everywhere? Everywhere. This is James and the Giant Peach, the Henry Selick film. Not Tim Burton. A lot of people think it's Tim Burton. I don't know why. It's a really great movie. This was Labyrinth on DVD, but I already have it. Actually, I have it like 3 times, so I didn't need another copy of it. And then here's Sweeney Todd. You know, I saw this movie initially. I didn't like it that much, but then over time, it kind of grew on me. Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. I was going to get this, but then guess what? Wasn't in the case. Morrissey and Robert Smith are just right behind me. You guys remember these Neurotically Yours DVDs with Foamy the Squirrel? Yeah, right? Yep. Here's Blade on DVD. So I found it on VHS and I found it on DVD. Oh, and here's Blade 2. This is actually directed by Guillermo del Toro. A lot of people don't know that Blade 2 was directed by Guillermo del Toro. This was a really weird book. This is Frankenstein, a Kaplan SAT score racing classic. And they're trying to advertise just the regular book Frankenstein, saying, oh, well, it has a lot of SAT words in it, so if you read this book, it'll put it into perspective. So, yeah, buy Frankenstein to increase your SAT score. I mean, I think you just read Frankenstein anyway. It's a great book. This is Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter. Surprisingly entertaining movie. I actually really enjoyed it. So the book is really good. Of course, here's another copy of Witching Hour. What's up with that? And a whole bunch of Anne Rice books. Here's a copy of The Vampire Lestat. Great book. I don't like the cover on this one. Whatever the series that, I don't know what year that series of her books were released, like the reissues, but I don't like that particular look for her books. I think it's ugly. And this is Ghoul Interrupted. Get it, like Girl Interrupted, but it's Ghoul Interrupted. Thought you guys would appreciate that. And then here's this really weird, sexy vampire book called The Vampire Legacy: Blood Secrets. She's beautiful and immortal. Okay, so I picked up this book. It said like, oh, graphic novels or comics you should read. And sure enough, I flipped it open, and the first page I hit, it said Lenore Noogies. That's so funny. I don't know if somebody just happened to look at that page a lot, but the first page I opened was Lenore Noogies. Oh, and then Inuyasha. So yeah, it's like 500 graphic novels you should read. Look at these really old, dangerous heaters. They were like $5. I would be so scared to plug those things in because I have a feeling they don't have quite as many safety features as we have today. I should have bought this. This was like this creepy, gross squirrel pillow. I don't know why I didn't, but it's kind of adorably disgusting. This is just a T-shirt with a skeleton on it. The Walking Dead zombies. I think people are. I don't know if that show's still going. I've only seen like the first 2 episodes of that show, but I know people are fanatical. Supernatural. I think it's funny how the shirt says Supernatural, the television series. Like if you saw Supernatural, you probably already know what it was if you're gonna buy the shirt. Actually, Robbie Gore's a big fan of Supernatural. This is the Fremont Vintage Mall in Seattle. Great place. It has a ton of stuff and a lot of different stuff coming in, and yeah, it's awesome. It had The Cure Disintegration on cassette. That's obviously a really great album. It's funny because the cassette players right there, they were like $30. I mean, I kept most of my cassettes in my collection, you know, from the year, so it was really cheap. Here's the Crow soundtrack on cassette. It's a really great soundtrack, in case you didn't know. Here's David Bowie's 1984 album, Tonight. I know that he had some criticisms of this album in later years, and a lot of people view it as one of his lower point records, but hey, still got some really good songs on there. And then this is Concrete Blonde, Bloodletting. Their 1990 album has, of course, a lot of great songs, but the one they're most famous for, Joey, is actually on this release too, so that's a benefit of this album. And here at Vintage Mall, they have a lot of cool art and a lot of different stuff. And so I actually picked up these cool 1965 Addams Family cards. I think they went with the game, but if I make a video about that later, I'll probably explain the depth of it all. But it's really cool. I picked up these cards that were there. And I actually made my way to the Funko store in downtown Everett, which I'm not a big fan of the art style of a lot of the Funko products, but they have introduced some newer figures like these Shining figures, which are really cool. But particularly, I wanted to highlight the Pan's Labyrinth Fawn figure and Lydia from Beetlejuice and a couple of these cool Beetlejuice things, which had a pretty unique look. And look at this, Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors. That's like my favorite musical. So that was just crazy. They had Audrey 2 there. They also had these Fruity Yummy Mummy and Fruit Brute figures, you know, from the cereals, the Halloween cereal, which is great. And the Lost Boys. It's just cool that they're representing characters like that, since there really hasn't been that much from the series. I also picked up this Dr. Finkelstein plush. I thought it was just too cute to pass up. This is another random thrift store in Washington, which I had never been to. So St. Vincent De Paul, I guess. I mean, it didn't seem like it would be the greatest, but sure enough, I was browsing around here in the media section, and they had, tons of different stuff, and it just kind of felt more like they had stuffed a whole bunch of stuff into like an empty warehouse space. Not necessarily the most organized, but it's fun to dig for stuff. I always appreciate that. And it was like an old Apple computer keyboard. And look at this bride and groom getting it on. And I found some DVDs. I found The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I've been looking for a while. This movie features so many great characters, and it's pretty good. It's like Van Helsing. That's the way I'll put it. It has a whole bunch of classic monster and horror characters in it that they kind of all put together and mesh them in a pretty good way. This is Idle Hands, which was released out of 1999. Seems like nobody remembers this movie, but it's about a hand that goes crazy, kind of like Evil Dead, and the guy cuts it off and it goes nuts. The hand is actually played by the guy who was the hand in the Addams Family, the 90s films. So it's another hand role for him, and it's just really crazy. This was a Bart Simpson phone. I thought it looked really cool. It said the eyes flash when you pick it up, and I didn't really have any use for it. It's like a corded old school phone. I don't even have a landline in my house anymore, and it's just strange the way they set it up, where if you look at the back, it's like folds out, and it's like we're talking to Bart's back. Really weirdly designed product. I don't know how else you would design it, but that just seems really weird to me. And as I was walking out, I noticed this behind the counter. It said The Great Mouse Detective, and I said, hey, can I take a look at that? And sure enough, it was a lithograph for The Great Mouse Detective from 1999. It's so great, and I was just like, oh, okay, I'll take it. It was only a couple bucks, and obviously on my Disney list, I did the most Goth Disney movies. This is voted number 1 for me, and I love it. So it was just great that I found that. And this was just another random thrift store that I found in the area. I just thought I would check it out. And it wasn't necessarily the best area. It seemed that there was a lot of activity in this neighborhood at the time. I'm pretty sure somebody was getting arrested not that far from here. I don't know. I don't think that's indicative of the neighborhood. I just think on this day it might have been a bad day. But anyway, when I got to the thrift store, they had, the average assortment of stuff. It was kind of sparse on the shelves. I mean, if you look here, there's some interesting stuff, but it felt sort of empty when you walked in. I don't know how else to describe it. And here's Howard Stern's Private Parts, the movie. And the reason I point this out is because look at the soundtrack they had there. Just happened to be there. They had the movie and the album. It has Typo Negative, Porno for Pyros, Rob Zombie, a whole bunch of actually pretty good bands were actually on this release. So I don't know if people really knew that these songs were actually on the soundtrack to the Howard Stern biography film. All right, let's take a look at that Cinderella / Alice in Wonderland VCD I found. If you're not sure what a VCD is, essentially think of it as a DVD, but put onto a CD. It's digital video, it's compressed video onto a standard CD. And it's typically really low video quality. And in America, most people would probably have watched them on bootleg content. This wasn't a highly supported professional official format for a lot of movies. But especially back in the 2000s, you could buy a lot of older TV shows or movies for really cheap on VCD, and you could play them in your computer. Now, VCD wasn't really popular in America or the UK. It was really popular in parts of Asia, and I even knew some guys who lived in the Philippines for a while, and they said everything was either a VCD or a DVD. Now, this Alice in Wonderland disc actually does contain the full movie of the 1951 Alice in Wonderland, and you sure can watch it. It is highly compressed and looks pretty terrible. In fact, it looks like they ripped it from a VHS copy and then put it onto a VCD. It has hard-coded Chinese subtitles, and you can watch it in English, although the left channel of the audio is English and the right channel is, I'm assuming, Mandarin or something. When my computer starts playing it, it actually plays both the language tracks at the same time because it's the stereo data. So you just hear this mess. In fact, my main desktop I used to edit all these videos couldn't play the VCD. It would just crash every program I put it in. I could watch it on my laptop the entire way through, but only with Windows Media Player. Yeah, here's a side-by-side comparison of the video quality on the VCD and a video quality from the DVD that I own. So yeah, it's pretty dramatic. The case that actually holds the disc is pretty cool. It's white plastic, and I really like the way it feels, but it doesn't actually have the plastic like a DVD has with the slipcover. They actually glued the paper that has the Cinderella image to the actual plastic, so it's glued to this, which is so strange. So yeah, VCD wasn't necessarily a competitor for a properly made DVD, but I think this is a really interesting thing that I found, and I'm happy to have it, and it was a really crazy Disney afternoon.
I hope you enjoyed this video and the amount of strange things that I ran across this particular time. It's kind of fun. I don't know why so many things were Disney related, but yeah, pretty interesting to me at least. Of course, you guys know, I mean, one of my most popular videos was the top Goth Disney movies, and yeah, it was just really cool to find some of the stuff I did today. And of course, if you want to see more thrifting, just let me know, and I'll just film as I go along, like I've been doing. So yeah, anyway, of course you can like, comment, and blah blah, yada yada yada, blah 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 blah.